My son is named Hunter. Dawn named him. He is biologically my child. Ironically, I had wanted all along to have the first kid, not the second, and I had hoped for a daughter, not a son. I was afraid that if I had a son, I'd be a know-it-all parent and have expectations of how my son should behave. Try to model him to be an amazing human being, skilled in everything, including but not limited to science, math, literature, tennis, swimming, basketball, video games, playing instruments, writing, baseball, gardening, singing, dancing, kung fu, and perhaps, if he can find the time, flying planes and shooting laser beams out of his eyes. I described this reasoning to my mom, how I was afraid that I'd expect too much out of a son, which was why I preferred a daughter. My mom initially took this to mean that I thought less of women, that I could get away with expecting less out of one. Actually, that was really far from my meaning. What I meant was that if I had a girl, I felt I would have more of an open mind and be more accepting, willing to learn as a parent together with my daughter as she grew up, accepting her for who she is and not modeling the kid after myself to fulfill all my own personal ambitions or make up for my shortcomings. I was afraid if I had a son, it'd be an excessive amount of stress for him dealing with such expectations. I was raised by a strong, successful, alpha, go-getter, assertive single mother, tire mom, and two feminist older sisters. I used to call myself a feminist as well until one day a friend told me I could be an advocate of feminism, but I could never be a feminist myself being a boy. This is because I'd never know the feeling of being handicapped by something so innate you can't control, your gender. As a boy, I undoubtedly have had life easier, opportunities have come more easily, so I could never truly be empathetic. So I no longer claim to be a feminist. Instead, I'm a women's rights advocate. If I had a girl, I would want to raise her to be strong like her aunts, Ruthann and Roxanne, and her grandmother, Janice, my mom. I always knew I wanted to have children. Ever since elementary school, I made mental notes about how I ought to parent, how I should not be late to pick up my kids from school, make sure they understood how to deal and cope with racism, make sure they grew up playing and watching team sports so they'd know how to schmooze over sports when they were older. The thoughts have continued all my life to contemporary thoughts that deal with modern day issues, like not letting an iPad do the parenting for me at a restaurant, to be a model for excellent communication with my spouse. When I heard about the whole fiasco with Catholic priests, I knew I had to talk to my kids about their bodies and make them comfortable to always talk to me about anything and everything, in case they were ever inappropriately touched or physically abused. Since I was a child, my mom recognized in me that I would make a good father, and I quickly realized also how much she looked forward to being a grandmother. When I came out to her in freshman year of college, she was just calm, supportive, and very curious. We sat down together for lunch one weekend in 2004 when I was visiting home from UCLA. It's a vague memory now, but I remember her first question was how long I had known. Some people asked me if my mom was devastated that her only son turned out to be gay, but upon closer look, it quickly makes sense why she took it so well. She knew from the start that I would grow up to be very successful in business. She knew how savvy I was with finances and how strong my computer skills were. She saw me for my musical talent y mi habilidad de hablar en español, 然后还会讲中文. Perhaps she knew all along that it was just another part of me, and that I would still end up the first among her children to settle down and buy a house, and also the first to give her grandchildren. Indeed, in 2010, I had carefully saved up enough money to buy my first home, a house in San Gabriel. In 2013, after being together with Don for 6 years, he finally moved in with me full-time and we took the most serious step. We combined car insurance policies. My mom had been watching our relationship progress, and a year earlier had announced in a public decree that she would not be liable for more than $10,000 of our wedding expenses. That same year, the federal Supreme Court upheld California's marriage ban. It came as a surprise and a disappointment, but we did not get caught up over it. Ultimately, In year 2015, we ended up in a civil union. My mom has always taught me that money comes and goes, is meant to be used, and not to get too attached to it. For this reason, I did not let myself get caught up over the loss of a great income tax deduction. At the end of year 2013, I left Liberty Mutual after working there for 8 years to finally open my own insurance agency and become a business owner. Having children is extremely expensive for gays if you don't want to knock up a poor girl and trick her into having your child. My mom had long been urging me, predictably but absurdly, to be on the lookout amongst my female friends for someone with good genes who would donate her eggs to me. Ultimately, we did not go that route. Unfortunately, the safest route is also the most expensive one, about $150,000 per child. You don't want the mother to, in the last minute, decide to keep the child for herself, and you don't want someone imposing their own parenting ideas. We paid for an egg donor and a surrogate, and were able to afford it with the success and growth of my insurance agency. In year 2018, our first child was born, and I named her Alexandria. She shares the same mother as Hunter, but Don is her biological father. But as soon as I held her and saw her fall asleep in my arms, I knew that she would be every bit my daughter as well as his. Like her name suggests, she would be great like the city and library and Alexander the Great, all to whom her name alludes. I am certain both my kids will be amazing academics, athletes, artists, gamers, popular kids, down-to-earth people, and also still possess the know-how to fly a jet and shoot lasers out of their eyes. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.